guys, I'm Bree.
And I'm Allie, and this is Offscript.
If you think about it, books are potential scripts for movies.
When this adaptation happens, typically it's disappointing because they went off script.
In this series, we will be talking about how off script they went.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Offscript. I'm Allie. And I'm Allie. I booted Bree off the podcast. It's just me now. No, I'm just kidding. We wanted to do a little intro to our super awesome, fun, amazing episode we're about to have for you guys. But unfortunately, our schedules didn't match up for us to record this together. So stay tuned after the episode and you'll get to hear Bree all to yourselves. In this episode, you guys, oh my gosh, we've felt blessed that we've been able to go and record at bookstores and stuff, but this is above and beyond what I thought we'd ever be able to do. We actually got an interview with an author, Matt Logelin, Two Kisses for Maddy, or Fatherhood as it's now called. Oh my gosh, you guys, oh. I'm swooning right now. I'm so excited. This is like my dream interview. And I hope you all like it. We chat about so much different stuff. Matt is such a fantastic guy. He is so sweet. And I'm so glad that, he said yes to us because what a awesome dream come true for just us two tiny little podcasters to actually be able to talk to someone about their work. So you guessed it, we talked about the ins and outs of making a book into a movie and how much control he had throughout it and his thoughts on it all. And we had a lot of fun. So we hope you do too. And we hope you enjoy this little bonus we have for you before we kick off season 3. So here you go. Have fun.
All right. Well,
Okay.
Welcome to Offscript. I'm Bree.
I'm Allie.
And
Who are you?
Yeah.
I'm Matt Logelin. Thank you for having me. This is really exciting.
Of course. Thank you so
Yes.
much for being on. We are so excited.
So excited. And what book did you write?
So the book we're going to be talking about, because I've written a couple.
Oh,
two,
very
actually.
cool.
Yeah, but the one we're going to be talking about today was once called Two Kisses for Maddy and has since been retitled Fatherhood. And we can talk a little bit about how that all happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
So did your book actually be retitled or just the movie is called Fatherhood?
No, they actually retitled the book. I should have a copy somewhere.
Wow.
So what happened was, and we'll talk a lot about this as we go along, but my book got turned into a movie. And when that happened, the publisher was like, how do we sell a book with a different title than the movie? And I think this happens every once in a while. And so they said, let's just retitle the book. And so I am, if you don't see video of me, I'm a very old now white man. And the movie stars a much better looking, much more fit, younger looking black man named Kevin Hart. And so there's a little cognitive dissonance because the book came out with me and my daughter on the cover originally. And now with the title change and the movie coming out, now it's a picture of Kevin Hart and the woman, the little girl who played my daughter. So I think there's a lot of confusion for some people, but anyway, it's part of the fun,
Yeah. So I basically curate our book list for us and schedule it. And I put Two Kisses on there because I knew she would really enjoy it. And when she read it, she was like, I don't know what that is. And I was like, it's Fatherhood on Netflix. You just watched it and you liked it.
So my husband passed away in November 2020. So
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Yeah. So Fatherhood came out the first Father's Day without him. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I have to watch this and cry the whole day. And because he passed away when my daughter was about to turn 4 and it was on my son's first birthday. So I immediately was like, I need to read this book. And it was everything and more than I could even imagine. So I'm just gonna gush about it the whole time I interview you. So
Very kind of you. I'm so sorry to hear that. It's just
thank you.
awful, and I can't believe that after your husband died, this was what I was trying to avoid anything that would make me sad. It's amazing that you gravitated to this horrible thing. I'm so sorry.
Oh my gosh, no, it was like I don't really know why, but I was so excited for it. So it helped that Kevin Hart was in it because I absolutely loved him, and he was the first comedian my husband and I saw together. I was like, it's meant to be. And so
that's really cool. That's really cool. I love to hear that. I love to hear that.
But yeah, so I guess I am an audiobook listener. So I was very excited when I heard it was an audiobook. And then I started listening to it and I was like, oh my gosh, it's read by the author. And I liked it so much I actually went and bought it too. So
oh my gosh, that's so nice. Thank you. I've only gotten one piece of feedback other than when I was recording it. I don't know who this guy was, but he was like the husband of a woman who like read my blog or something. And he wrote me not long after the audiobook came out, and he was like, oh man, they should have had somebody else read this. Your voice was monotone and terrible. And I was like, you know, and I don't mind criticism. I don't. I frankly just kind of put it off to the side as much as I put praise off to the side, and we can talk about that later too. But I was kind of like, damn, that was harsh. And then I was like, this guy's never the process of recording an audiobook is so difficult and awful. And I would never recommend it to anybody unless you're like a professional like voice actor. But like,
wow,
I was sitting there with like a pillow on my stomach to keep my stomach because I was hungry and like my stomach was growling. And so I had to stop that because the mic picks up everything. They had me, you know, this is an incredibly emotional book. I had never actually read, I've written it and I wrote it in pieces and all this stuff, but I'd never read the book out loud, especially. And so to have to read it as an audiobook and then have somebody in a studio saying like, okay, well, you've got to stop. You got to go back and do it again.
Oh my gosh.
Do it in less emotion. I'm crying through this thing. The guy's telling me to do it in less emotion. So the first and literally the only thing I've ever heard from somebody was like, man, that was terrible. It was too monotone. And I'm like, they told me to do that. I was crying. Listen, man, this was hard for me. And I was trying to, you know, infuse it with the emotion that it needed. And then they were like, oh, we got to do another take of that.
Too much emotion.
you need 5 minutes to stop crying, man. And I was like, probably like 10, but yeah, sure. That sounds great.
Oh my gosh.
That's a little tangent, but I appreciate it. I never know if people have listened to this thing or anything, but I appreciate that. And I'm sorry if my voice was too monotone.
No, it was perfect.
My story with this is I usually read books. I'm not a big audiobook person. And so when she told me she was buying the book, I was like, oh, I'll just wait for the book to come. But then for our recording schedule, I was like, oh, this is so hard. And she had given me her Audible sign in for something else. I can't remember. So I was like, I'm going to surprise her and I'm going to start listening to this book. And I felt like I was your best friend because you were in my ears. And I was like, oh, I feel his emotion. So I felt your emotion.
Oh my
so
gosh.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good. Now I feel vindicated in some way.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was just like driving my car sobbing. I was like, it's dangerous, but oh my gosh, I can't stop listening. And so
yeah, I had a job where I was able to go on walks a lot. And so I would listen to your book. And I for some reason, I thought I would have a lot longer time in the book before I would get to the emotional stuff. So it got to it pretty quick. And I just started sobbing on my walk. So I'm like walking around the campus at work like,
yeah. I used to tell people because when the book came out, and people for the most part, who had been following my blog and who knew a little bit about what was happening, they were excited about the book, and that was really kind and sweet of them. But they would tell me they'd be reading it on like an airplane and things like that. And I was like, what were you thinking? You know what I mean? Like, you know what's about to happen here. Like, it's like, you're the most callous person, and I count myself as one of those people. But you're just gonna cry about this kind of stuff, and and it's when you're out in public, it's really hard to explain whether it's an audiobook or you're actually holding a book up, or even worse, a Kindle where somebody can't see the cover and they can't look it up and see what's going on. It leaves people to wonder, like, are you just having like a breakdown of some sort, or are you being affected by some art? And it's hard to tell sometimes. So.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it was just so good. And I
Well,
just
thank you. I really
I had
appreciate it.
I had something in my head and I lost it. So it'll come back to me. Don't worry.
All right.
No
That's how
problem. No
I
problem.
that's how I roll.
Yeah, yeah.
Me too.
That's
Me
how we
too.
do this. All right. Well, we've got some questions for you. So are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. How involved in the making of the movie were you? And did Maddie get to be involved?
Okay, so I was way more involved than I expected.
Mhm.
I feel like I had a pretty healthy understanding of how this was going to go, right? Like I thought they were going to option my book, they were going to make the movie, and they didn't care what I was going to say. And the privilege I was granted of getting paid to let them have this thing was all I got. But it couldn't be further from the truth. Actually, it was really cool. The screenwriter, her name was Dana Stevens, and she was the original screenwriter on the movie, and she was calling me all the time about
Wow.
little details. I think she just wanted to get to know me really well. Like she'd read my book, she'd read my blog, but she was just asking things like, "What kind of car did you drive?" And it's like little
Oh,
things like that, which
wow.
were helping to paint a picture. And so as she was writing the movie, she had this idea for a character, and I think Lil Rel Howery is Kevin's best friend in the movie,
Yeah.
and he's like kind of like a composite of a bunch of my friends. So my
Yeah.
Dana called me one time, and she, I live in LA, and I don't know where you guys live, but in LA, like it's kind of typical that like men don't really mature until they're like in their late 40s or 50s. And so that is most of my friends. I was an anomaly in that I was married and had a child. Most of my friends were not. And Dana came to me one day and she said, "Okay, so I have this idea for a character who's like really funny, but like not good with kids, and he's not married, and he's kind of a playboy. Do you like have a friend like that you could tell me about that would like help me like flesh out the character?" And I was like, all of my friends are like that. So it's like I have and some of them are better with kids than others, but like I could take from my friend Anthony, who I went to college with, or my friend Mark, who I went on from elementary school on with,
Oh,
or my
wow.
friend Ken, who we call the bastard, who lived in LA, and it's just like he would be there to hang out with me and with Maddie if we went to a bar, but like anything else, it was like, oh man, no, man, it's not for me. Never change a diaper, none of that stuff. And so I thought that was really cool. She wanted to know a little bit about my friends, and wanted to hear stories about them so she could put it in. She wanted to hear stories of things that happened at Maddie's school. There's a scene where the young girl that played my daughter Maddie, jumps off some playground equipment.
Yeah.
And we, for legal reasons, had to change that up quite a bit, but it was somewhat based on some stories I told her about things that happened
Wow.
at Maddie's school.
Wow.
My daughter is what I think traditionally used to be called like a tomboy,
Yep.
wears very traditionally like clothes associated with boys, all this stuff. And so there was stuff like that was woven into the film. I think that
Yeah.
Dana did a really good job of bringing in. And then kind of jump ahead a little bit, when a movie is adapted, a lot of times the director gets a pass at writing the screenplay, I guess, which is, you may know this, maybe you don't. I didn't know
I
this,
didn't know
even
that.
though I'm remarried, and I'm remarried to a screenwriter. I'm learning a
Oh,
lot now.
cool.
She told me a little bit about this as it was happening, but the director was a guy named Paul. Why can't I think of his name right now? This is so terrible. Paul Weiss. It's like, why did I lose his last name? Paul Weiss. He's just the nicest guy on earth, just like Dana. They were just the most wonderful people. And Paul, as the director, kind of rewrote things, because at that point they had found out who was going to be starring in the movie. Like a lot of times when the screenplay is written, so they might have somebody in mind, but they may not be able to make time in their schedule or whatever it might be. And there were a lot of people that had been slated to play me in this movie over the course of almost a decade of it being adapted and
Wow.
passed around different places, and we can talk about that as well.
Mhm.
But it was this incredible thing where Paul also came to me, was asking me some questions before the movie happened. But then when they started filming the movie, they were filming it primarily in Montreal and in Boston, and they flew us up there, flew Maddie and me up there for a week, and we got to be on set the entire time, and we got to be a part of all of the filming. And one of the things that got that, and I know this is a question you guys might ask me later, but like as they were filming, Paul would turn around to me in his director's chair and be like, is that something you would have said? Is that how you would have said it? And there was like one very specific moment that made it into the movie where I got to weigh in and say like, no, Paul, like this is what I would have said. And he just like called down to Kevin, or like whoever was down there with Kevin, and was like, okay, this is what Matt said, do it like this. And then the next take was that, and that's what ended up in the movie. And so that to me is like really magical, because I didn't expect, nor did I necessarily want to be a part, you know, like I don't feel like, you know, I wrote the book, I lived the life. I'm not a movie maker. I don't know how to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I never want to tell somebody who's a professional, like, this is how you should do it. Or like tell Kevin as a great actor, like,
you're not acting this properly.
listen, this is how I would have done it.
Yeah.
And you are really, I don't know if I can swear, but you are really effing this up. You know? So I really didn't want to be a part of that. But when I was asked, it was like, okay, well, I guess I need to be honest at this point. And I found that to be such a cool thing. And so, you know, being able to be on set and see them making this movie and have Maddie there with me was just such a fun experience. I mean, I
bet.
I never expected they were going to do that. I just thought like, oh, they're going to make this movie, it'll come out. If it's good, I'll be excited about it. If it's bad, I'm going to have to change my name, because they used my name in the movie, and we're going to have to like move to another country or something. But you know, thankfully, I was like really happy with the entire process and how it all played out. So it's great.
That's so awesome.
Okay, this leads me into another question that now that I know how involved you were and how much they took your opinions, how can I ask this politely? Did you have that relationship that Kevin and his mother-in-law had with your family?
Oh, yeah.
Because I didn't read it. Okay,
yeah, it didn't seem like it in your book.
No.
So watching it, I was like, oh, what?
There are, you know, like I said at the beginning, as somebody who's having their life, you know, adapted.
Yeah.
It's funny, right? Because like I kind of think about this in like concentric circles, and the further you get from the center, like the more distorted things are.
Yeah.
So, you know, I lived the experience, and then I wrote a blog about the experience, which was pretty immediate. That was coming out of my brain. Like I was just saying it as it was happening. Pretty boring, to be frank with you. Talking about going to dinner. It was just to update my family that I was doing stuff with Maddie and not just leaving her in the house.
Yeah.
And then I wrote a book about it, which was edited not only by me, but by an editor, like a professional, like, you know, at a publishing house. And then it was adapted for movie, and then, you know, edited and readapted kind of by the director. And then it was, you know, there's some ad-libbing. So it's all to say that like this, the further this gets out from reality, the more, you know, different it could be. And so I told myself that from the beginning, like I have to allow myself to not be upset about changes to my life. I have to allow myself to not be worried about how they're going to depict me. But I was worried about my other family members. Like I'm still very close with Liz's parents. Like I see them all the time. They hang out with us. We go on trips with them. I mean, we're all just like best buds still. It's like, it's great.
That's
I'm still
good.
like, negotiating with Liz's sister to come down and maybe spend 4th of July with us right now. You know, it's just like those kinds of things that like I'm just thankful for that kind of relationship. And so I was really worried when I read the first version of the screenplay, when it had my mother-in-law, whose name is Candy. They had her kind of being tough on me and all that. And that was, nothing could be further from the truth. She was so wonderful, and she was so kind. And to this day, same thing. I mean, I love her to death. But when they make movies, of course, there has to be some drama. Conflict, right?
Yeah.
And there's got to be drama. And how do you inject that? And one of the oldest tropes in Hollywood or any sort of story is the mother-in-law, right? Like if you build a house in the back of your yard, it's called a mother-in-law suite. Like it's like things like that people say. And so it's just part of that trope. And I think you know, obviously the conflict in the movie and in the book is with myself and with just death and the loss of my wife Liz, and trying to you know, take care of a baby and like live a meaningful life with her. But like all that's kind of, I hate to say this, it's kind of boring. Like the raising of a child is boring, right? There's a reason there's like the movie jumps so far ahead in time very quickly in the movie. You know, the day-to-day stuff that I wrote about on my blog, that I even talked about in my book, is pretty boring. And so to inject some sort of drama into it is really important. And then also it gives the character some arc, right? Because at the beginning, you know, we're kind of in conflict throughout the time, and throughout the movie, we're kind of like building to this thing. And then by the end, we're all friends and everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it all ties it up. But I did, before the movie came out, before it was like even being filmed, I called my mother-in-law up and said, like, I want you to know this is what's going to happen. It's going to turn out fine in the end, but just so you know,
Just so you know.
But there were family members, and I think that are still like kind of upset about it. Like they were just
Yeah.
not happy with the way
Yeah.
she was portrayed, and I get it. But the thing that makes me the happiest is that she was okay with it, and that
That's good.
that her husband, my father-in-law was also okay with it. And everybody, we're all still friends, even
Yeah.
years after the movie came out. So everything is good, like
Yeah, that's good.
it
No one's
worked out
harboring
fine.
ill feelings.
Yes. Because that
As far
was
as I know, if they are, it'll have to come out in therapy or something. We'll figure it out.
because that was the main thing that I think shocked us the
Oh,
most.
absolutely. I remember
So-
because I didn't watch the movie before I read the book. So I read the book, then I watched the movie. And when it got to that conflict, I have a degree in film. So I kind of like told myself, like, okay, this is their conflict that they're putting into it. But I was like, oh my gosh, his family was so supportive in the book. Like, how did they feel seeing this?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like my dad is also like very supportive. And in the early draft of the movie, I think they had him as like an alcoholic. My dad has like literally 2 drinks a year. Like he's never like had an alcohol problem. So like they had that, and then they made him really absent in and the way it was explained to me, and when I talked to Paul about it, he was like, I'm trying to, like, a lot of his edits were made to kind of mirror Kevin's relationship with his real dad.
Okay.
But, like, a lot of that's to get emotion out of him, so he can like tap into like real stuff that happened, because he's married, he's got 4 kids, and he can kind of find some of that stuff. But like I think you guys you might understand, like once you go through something like this, it's a completely different thing than trying to imagine going through something like this. And so I think Paul was really smart, because Kevin is a comedic actor, like that's his bread and butter. And to do a dramatic role, I think this is the second one that he had done, but to make him the lead character in a dramatic film like this, I think Paul was really smart to say, like, okay, I'm going to find a way to like really make this a little bit easier for him. And I think I mean, I'm super amazed that he was as good as he was in a dramatic role. I was honestly I was surprised.
He did great.
All
Oh,
I
the
could-
scene where he's crying in the hospital.
I just like
Yeah,
start
that
sobbing.
killed
I was
me.
like, I relate so much. So he did awesome.
That
Yeah, no,
that chapter in the book got me. That's when I was like, oh, because I didn't realize that Liz didn't. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry again, aren't I? I didn't realize
okay,
that.
we all will.
Yes, I didn't realize that she didn't get to meet Maddie, and she didn't tell me anything. So I'm reading this like, oh, I still got a while before she's gone, and then it hit, and I was a mess. I feel the tears trying to come. So then when Kevin portrayed that, I was like, this is exactly how I was feeling when I read the book.
Yeah. I will say that was the scene. Because I was a part of a lot of this, I got to see like different cuts of the movie. Like Paul would have me come to the Sony studio, and I would sit in this room, and he'd be like, do you want to watch it with somebody? Like, I think maybe you should watch it alone. I don't know what's best, but I was like, okay, I'll watch it alone. And I watched an early cut. This is like pre-pandemic, actually. It was like maybe right before the pandemic. I saw a cut of it, and it was the first time, because I'd seen, when they were filming in Montreal when I was there, I got to see different scenes being filmed, but I hadn't seen a full cut of the movie, and I hadn't seen certain parts, and I saw that, and I lost it, because it felt, it's I don't think anyone can ever prepare you, or maybe even fully explain what it's like to see yourself on, reflected on screen like that. And whatever was happening, just it felt exactly like it felt for me. I mean, it was just insane to me, and I couldn't believe it, because up until then I was thinking, oh, this is gonna be easy. It's like I can't see myself in that character very well, because I see Kevin as just a funny guy, and that was my thing. It was like there's enough separation in his character and me that I'm not going to feel anything, and this will be really easy to watch. And I was like, well, no, that's not the case.
Oh my gosh.
This is absolutely horrible to watch. And but also just wonderful. I loved it. I mean, I couldn't believe that he pulled that emotion out. I'm glad that you guys felt that too, because I just think it's so important, because that the speed at which everything happened, which you experienced reading it, and the speed at which everything happened as you watch the movie or you listen to the audiobook or whatever, is exactly how it felt to me. It's like you go from this moment of having literally the happiest moment of your life. We've been so
Mhm.
excited about this baby. We've been
Mhm.
so worried about her health, and she was born 7 weeks early and all this stuff. And it's just the relief of getting past that part was just so immense, and it was so perfect. And life was like, for that 27-hour period, whatever, it was like life was perfect, and like nothing could be
Yeah.
better than that moment. And then to have it go so drastically the other way, and to have Liz die like that was it was so shocking. And just to this day, like I still can't wrap my head around it. Like
Mhm.
I happen to not be a religious person, but I think religion is such a meaningful thing to people who go through stuff like this, because it helps them make sense of this, right? Because it doesn't
Mhm.
make sense to have somebody there at 1 second and the next second not breathing and not speaking to you and not doing any of the
Yeah.
things, and not going to be there for the rest of your life for a future you'd planned together. Like your brain can't make sense of that. We're
Mhm.
not, as humans, we're just not good with that. So I wished throughout my time that I had found God or been religious or something, so I had some help to get through it. Because for me, it was just like, oh, this is horrible, and I don't
Mhm.
know how to
Yeah.
get through this without her. So
Mhm.
so I'm glad that all came through, because it is such an important part of just, I think, why people were interested in my life and my story in the first place. It's just, this is not supposed to happen, right? Like, this
Right.
isn't supposed to
Yeah.
happen to people like us. We're too young, like whatever it might be. Like, she did everything right. She was healthy. She was all this
Mhm.
stuff, and for her to die so suddenly was just horrible.
Yeah. Like my husband, we were coming home. He was riding motorcycles. He got it for his 30th birthday. He had had it 1 month. And we were driving home. We had gone to the zoo for our 1-year-old's birthday. And he's driving home and he's like, I'm going to go get, because I was like, we're going to get McDonald's on the way home. He's like, oh, I'm not getting that. I'm going to go get Jack in the Box. I was like, fine, whatever. So he goes to get Jack in the Box. I'm like, where is he? His birthday party starts in an hour. And I'm calling and calling. And then my friend sends me a article. It was like, did Cameron go riding today? And it was a motorcycle accident. And I was like, yes, he did. And then I get the phone call. And he held on for 5 days, but he was in the ICU and like, knocked out. And so
Yeah,
it was like I lost him the day of the accident.
yeah,
And it was the same thing. It was like he was fine and then he was gone. And so reading your book, I was like, oh my gosh, I felt that. I felt that. It was like I was justified for all of my feelings. And seeing the movie first, I went in expecting a really quick first year type of thing. And knowing
Mhm,
that the book was all the first year, I was like,
mhm.
I've been, because it had been about a year and a half, 2 years. Oh, it was his 2-year mark. I was reading your book.
Yeah.
We did really great timing on this, because at
That's
his
amazing. I'm so
2-year
sorry.
mark, I was like,
Um,
I think it was when
Yeah.
she passed away, right? I think that
Oh
was
yeah.
when I read it. It was like, I was like, oh, that was great timing. 'Cause I'm sitting there sobbing, and but it was just because as of right now, he's been gone not quite 3 years yet. So I still relate to the first year. So this
mhm.
book is like, it's
She
like,
she immediately texted me and was like, Bree, because she didn't, oh my gosh, I'm really getting emotional over this. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Please, I'm crying too. So don't worry. It's fine.
Because she doesn't have anyone who's experienced this too. And so a lot of her feelings, she wasn't sure if it was okay to be feeling, or if it was like, if anyone else felt like that. So then she texted me and was like, Brie, he's felt all of this. This makes me feel like I'm not alone and like I'm okay.
my biggest one was that right after it happened, I would never kill myself, right? I have 2 kids, like, but
Yeah.
if something were to happen, I wouldn't have fought for myself. And to read that, I was just like, oh my gosh, because that was my biggest worry, is like, is something wrong? I have 2 kids at home. Why do I feel like this?
Yeah.
And so just knowing that I wasn't alone, I was like, I'm gonna buy this book and I'm just gonna have it forever, because read it every time I feel like something's wrong with me. And so I just want to personally thank you for that. And when you said you would do our interview with us, I was like, oh, I am more stressed out than if Stephen King wanted to interview with us, if Nicholas
So
Sparks
sweet.
wanted to interview with us. Like, you're like, I'm just so happy that you said yes. So
Mhm.
thank you.
I appreciate it. I'm this. I mean, this is incredibly touching. I mean, I feel so horrible for you, and I know how hard that is. it- I'm glad that it was something there, because I mean, I think one of the things I never expected with this, because this is I think writing a lot of times is a very selfish pursuit. It's just, I hate to say it, this was for me, this was for Maddie, this was
Mhm.
for my friends. But I think about it that way because, like, when I was writing it, I know I could have done things differently to pander to a particular audience. I used to joke with my publisher, I'm like, man, I just need to find religion here, and we're gonna sell so many copies of it. But one of the things that I think was in the back of my head throughout the writing process was, I wanted to be true to myself, and I wanted to be true to the people who really knew me, because um, I didn't much care if some random person said they hated my book, but it would have killed me if one of my friends would have been like,
Yeah.
"This doesn't sound like you."
Yeah.
Not that whether or not they liked it wouldn't matter to me, but I didn't want them to accuse me of being somebody I wasn't.
Right.
And so that's why you get all the swearing in the book, because that's who I that's who I am. Those are real emotions. Those are felt. Thankfully my publisher was cool with it. My editor, multiple times throughout the writing process, was like, I think we need, can I swear on your podcast?
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
fine. She swears all the time.
All the time.
Okay, good. So she was like, I think we need like another fuck here, and maybe like a shit here. And this is like real conversations I'm having with an editor in New York as I'm sitting in LA, or like when I was in India or whatever. And it was like just the coolest thing to be able to have somebody who understood that this wasn't meant to be gratuitous. I wasn't just throwing swear words in there where I didn't think they belonged. And over the years I've had a lot of people, I've most of them, believe it or not, have been handwritten letters by people who I assume are kind of older, and they found my address, and they'll send me a letter, and they'll say, I was so excited to read your book, but then I saw all the swearing and I threw it right in the trash.
Oh shoot!
No.
And I was like, how do I respond to this? Because first of all, you already paid for the book, so whatever.
Exactly.
Like,
Thank you for that.
on that level, it doesn't matter. But really, it was kind of one of those things where it's like I wanted to explain it a little bit, and the explanation was always like, what did you expect? Did you want some sanitized version of my feelings? Because I don't think that's not accurate. It's not fair to Maddie when she someday reads this. It's not fair to my friends and family. And there's so much more gravity to say something like I did at the funeral, where it's like, this fucking sucks. Like, I can't express what I'm going through more than by saying it that way. Would it have been better to this audience, perceived audience, to say something to the effect of like, oh, today was a bad day?
No,
Like, there's no emotion in that. Like,
no,
I'm really sad today. Like, that says something, but it doesn't say anything. You know what I mean? It doesn't give you any feeling.
This sucks is exactly what I said. So when I read, I watched it first. So when the movie kicked off with that, that's what got me. I started bawling. I was like, this is my movie. This is perfect. And then I read it. I was like, this is my book. So no, it's like, no one understands. They're like, it sucks. That's it. And it's like, that's the only words that you can use to describe it.
Well, what's really funny about that is, I got to tell you this. So they filmed a bunch of different, as they do, there's multiple takes of things. And so in the book and in my real life, I had said, like, I was literally in a chapel right down the street from where I'm staying now. And I said, first things I said were, this fucking sucks, And this is to a bunch of, like, family members and friends, and some of them are pretty religious. And I'm in, like, kind of a holy place that I shouldn't. But it was literally the only thing I could get out of my mouth. And so when they were filming that scene, I wasn't there for it. But I got a call after the movie had wrapped, and, like, it was done. It was ready to be released. But, like, just before it was about to be released, I got a call. And they were like, I just want you to know there's gonna be some news coming out, like, in the next couple of days, but, like, Barack and Michelle Obama's production company, Higher Ground, has signed on to be, like, our producing partner on this. Which is, like, just blowing my mind.
That's crazy.
What the hell? And so I'm like, this is unbelievable. This is going to add so much more weight to this, and it's just going to make people, they're going to see it more in more of a legitimate sense, I think, and people will just take it more seriously. and I was like, this is amazing. I'm so excited. And then I got a call from Paul, the director, and he's like, I just wanted to let you know. He's like, I don't know where it came from, but somebody at Netflix, and we suspect maybe it might have been from higher ground. I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying this. But the original beginning of the movie was he actually said this fucking sucks. And somebody's notes at the very end stages were, we want to take that out because we think there's more gravity in not using the F word because it's Kevin Hart, because he's got a profane, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But
and I thought that's a really smart note. Like that's
Yeah.
a super smart. And I think maybe I would have been offended if it hadn't come across that way. Like if it had been like, we don't want to hear any swearing at the beginning. Like we think this is terrible. But I think that made a lot of sense to me. And so that's the beginning of that movie got altered a little bit. And I think it was for the better, just in that particular case, even though I, as a human, really think that swearing in those words really do carry some emotional weight that just saying it sucks doesn't carry. But I think it worked out great in this case. So.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. When you were reading it, that's what got. She doesn't cuss as much as I do. And so I was not expecting it. So the first time you said fuck in the book, I was like, my people.
I think that was some early bonding with me and a lot of my readers was that. And then just that small minority of people who would write me and be like, why do you think you need to do this? And the question to me was always like, well, what did you expect me to handle? Like, how did you expect me to handle the situation? I feel like swearing was like the least worst thing I could do, because I didn't like go on a bender and like leave my daughter behind. I didn't abuse her. I didn't do anything terrible in the world. I tried to live my life as best I could and as accurately and as authentically as I could for the people around me. Because I didn't know who I was going to encounter. Like I didn't know who was going to read this book. I kind of suspected my mom would just buy all the copies that got printed. In case it was a total bomb, and then my mom would be like, just so you know, I made sure
you sold some.
you sold 10 copies today. It's great. So that was sort of my expectations were low, and that was like one of them. And so so I really did find it important to say like, this is who I'm writing for, and try to stick to that throughout the process. And I think the movie did a pretty good job of that too. So
I think so.
That was the first question, right?
That was the first one, but we answered a bunch in that one.
Were there changes that you weren't okay with, and then were there changes that you were okay with? We kind of answered that second part, but
yeah, a little bit. I think the biggest one we kind of already talked about, which is just the portrayal of my mother-in-law. I think that was really hard. I think if there was any issue I was going to have with the movie, it was just like how she was going to be portrayed. Everything else, like I think they did a really good job of making me like a real character. Like they didn't make me a hero, which I was really hoping they wouldn't. And that kind of goes back to the thing I was telling you guys about, like that line that I got to help Kevin with while they were filming was specifically around that. And I can't remember the exact context, but one of the things I always used to talk about, whether it was in the book or just in life in general, was that like, I'm not doing anything abnormal or special here. Like I'm raising my child. Like there's nothing, I'm not special for it, like I'm just a guy doing what a guy should do, whether or not their partner dies, right? Like every person who is part of a partnership that brings a child in the world, the expectation is that it should be equal. Everybody should be doing their part. And my wife wasn't there anymore, but it didn't mean I was just going to be like, I'm out of here.
She's not here. I'm not here either.
And that wasn't it. And I thought like, what I'm doing is not remarkable in any way. That's what I've said all along. Like, I still can't believe I have a book deal. I can't believe I'm talking to you. I can't believe they made a movie. I can't believe anybody gives a shit about any of this, because I've not done anything remarkable. People I know who've been in similar situations, in worse situations, right? Like, you have 2 kids, right? I only had 1. Like just multiplying the pain and the sadness times 2. And also having children that were fully, or at least a 4-year-old that maybe had been more aware of who her dad was, and that he's not there. Maddie had no awareness of that. Like her pain is, I don't want to diminish it in any way as she feels it as she gets older, but hers is different than a kid who, like my friend's children whose mom died when they were like 9 and like 7, they experience it so much different. And those stories to me are more remarkable. Your story is more remarkable. The woman whose husband died the same day as as Liz did from
Yeah.
the exact same thing. Her name is Jackie. She's still a friend of mine, lives up in Canada. Her story was more remarkable. Like, why did anybody care about me? And I think as white people, we have to like question that all the time, right?
Yeah,
Like,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely.
this is total white privilege. It's funny. I was just talking to a friend of mine right before our meeting here, and she's somebody I met like 15 years ago or so, right after Maddie was born. I met her in a record store, and she's just the most amazing person on earth. But our first meeting was, she came up to me and she said, "Who the fuck do you think you are?" Like,
No.
I'm a single mom. I've got 2 kids. My dream is to be on Oprah. How did you end up on Oprah?
Oh.
And and she's like, this like Latina lady from East LA. She's we couldn't be any more different
Mhm.
in our life experiences. And I was straight up with her. This 15 years ago, I said to her, it's because I'm a white guy. Like, people,
Mhm.
they didn't expect this to happen to the young blonde
Yeah.
white woman, right? She was
Yeah.
like this pretty woman. She'd done everything, right, and everything was totally perfect in their life. And like, oh, the whole thing exploded. Back then I was a little younger, so I didn't quite look like this. I didn't look like the kind of person that deserved it. And I think like acknowledging that is such an important part of this, because there are so many people with better, and I don't mean, it sounds callous to say this, but like more tragic stories, more suited for the screen, more suited for the pages of a book than mine. As I've said before, my life is relatively boring, but I had all these people giving me these opportunities, and I felt like I had to take them. And I started a nonprofit foundation because of that, because it was such an important part of like giving back and not just taking this privilege and using it only for myself. And so it's a hard dance to do, because I never ever wanted to be accused of like, profiting on my wife's death.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think I maybe mentioned it in the book a few times, but I also could hear her in the back of my mind saying like, you lost half your income when I died, like, and actually more than half, it was like 70%, because she always made more money than me. And like, how are you going to provide for this kid? How are you going to make sure this child has the lifestyle that we were going to have with her? And so I had to jump at some of these opportunities, even though I said no early on to people asking me to write a book. It didn't seem right. It didn't seem okay. But truly, it has been the privilege I'm afforded by being like a white man in this world. And I hate it. I hate it in so many ways. I think it's really shitty. And I think I hope I mean, part of the thing that I love so much about Kevin playing me was that like I think it was cool that Sony and everybody involved, all the producing partners, had the ability to look at this and go, well, this is a universal story. This isn't a story about a white guy and his blonde wife. Like, this is a story that can be told. If you've ever loved somebody, you can feel this. You can feel this kind of pain. And I think it takes it from my, sort of perspective, and just says this is a universal thing that everybody can relate to. And I love that so much. And I think it helped me feel a little bit better about that too, because I don't think Hollywood, I can't think of too many times Hollywood has ever taken a story by a white author or a white writer and flipped it. But how many times has Hollywood whitewashed so many
All the
movies
time.
throughout history, right? And so I find it to be a huge honor to have it go the other way, and I've had people come to me and say like, oh, that must have been so weird, like, why, like, why did they do that? It's like, why not? Like, what
Yeah.
Do you realize
the
it's Kevin
story-
Hart?
Yeah.
right? It's like Sony wanted the biggest star they could get. They got, I mean, and he was it,
Yeah.
and I would say that, like, it's so important to consider that and again, there's nothing inherently white about my story, other than it came from a writer who happens to be white. Like, this isn't a story about being white, and
No.
but I think that like it goes the opposite way for Asian characters or black characters. Like, you can't, it's not acceptable to change the race of the protagonists or whoever it is in these movies if it goes the other way. It can't be done. And so I feel really proud that this actually happened in my case, and I love it.
I realize I want to ask, has Maddie read it yet?
she's read through like a few chapters,
Yeah.
but she hasn't read the whole thing, and she at one point had been like begging me to do it. You know, it was fun. We used to go to Target or whatever to buy stuff, and for a while, when it came out in paperback, my book was on the end cap at Target for like
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
that's cute.
6
Yeah.
months or whatever. So it wasn't even like we were going to a bookstore to seek it out, but we'd walk past the end cap in the books in the book section of Target or whatever,
Mhm.
and it would be there. Maddie's like, can we buy this book? Can we buy this book? And I'm like, I have like 50 copies at home. And I was
like, we don't have to buy this one.
yeah, I'm like, we could save this $13 and buy something else cool, you know? And but then it was like, I had to think about it. I'm like, when in the world is my kid gonna be able to walk into a bookstore and buy, or Target especially, and buy my book?
Yeah.
Right.
We got to do it one other time when my book came out in Slovakia, and we
Cool.
happened to be on a trip, and we diverted ourselves to Slovakia to go meet the publisher of my book because I thought
Oh
it'd
my
be fun.
gosh.
And we walked into a bookstore and they had 2 copies of my book in
cool.
Slovak, and so we bought it. And I was just like, this is so weird, you know,
That
to
is
be
so cool.
able to do that. And that was like such a privilege. But no, she's not read it yet. She has watched the movie, and I got to before it actually hit Netflix, like a couple days before, I got to watch it. Like the folks at Netflix called me up. Actually, I did an interview, and somebody was like, the person interviewing me was like, "Oh, I loved the movie," and I was like, you know, and there's a representative from Netflix on the call too, so I don't say anything stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
And the he says, "Oh man, the movie was so great. I loved it." And I was like, "Wait, you saw it?" And I like, as I said that, I get a text, and the woman from Netflix is like, "Wait, you haven't seen the movie yet?" And I was like, "No, nobody. I've seen like a cut, but that was 2 years ago. What do you mean? The journalists have seen it, and I haven't seen it yet." So they're like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Like, we're gonna send you like a thing." So they sent me a code so I could like, you know, watch the movie. And so the cool thing was Maddie and I got to watch it a couple days in advance, and then you know, my in-laws, again, who are so wonderful, really wanted to have a party and watch the movie, and I was like,
Cute.
why don't you guys watch it first?
Yeah.
You're like,
And
I don't want to
then
be in this party.
yeah, and I was like, maybe don't make it the central theme of the
Right.
party. Like, don't have it on and make everybody sit there and watch it. Like, just have some chips around and like have it on in the background or whatever.
Yes.
And chit chat with each other.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't watch it together. And so they watched it, and they're like, "Thank you for the warning. We'll still plan to have everybody over on Saturday or whatever it was, but maybe we won't watch it together."
Yeah.
I was like, I think that's for the best. Everyone's gonna be
Oh my
crying.
gosh.
Just make it a happy affair. We can
Yeah.
celebrate this thing happening, but not, you know, we don't have to watch the sad parts together.
Yes.
So, but yeah, it worked out pretty well. So Maddie will read the book someday, I assume.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah. I know, we just keep answering all our questions. We're doing
I'm
so
so sorry.
good.
I
I
just-
know.
No,
we're
it's
doing
totally
great.
fine. That's perfect.
Yeah, this is what we were hoping would happen. So it's perfect.
It's more natural, right? Like, we
Yes,
just kind of flow into these conversations. So it's great.
I figured, I was like, we're gonna have so many questions like pop up while we're talking too. Like,
Yeah.
were there changes that had to be done on set while shooting just because it didn't work on film? Because I know sometimes like you think that a scene's gonna be great, but then you shoot it and you're like, ooh, we need to change, like something's not working on the screen.
Other than the drama.
Yeah, apart from the drama.
I think the drama, and just that there was that scene with Kevin that I mentioned, just where he, you know, he could feel it. Like, he just didn't feel like it sounded authentic. And I think for him, you know, that was coming through. It was coming through for everybody. And I think that's where it was really neat that the director was able to kind of reach out to me and ask that question. In other instances, I don't know of any. They were filming for quite a while that I wasn't there. I mean, like a week was great. I wish I could have been there longer, but it was like, you know, Maddie's only like summer break time.
Right,
Sneak away.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there were probably plenty, you know, but I think they did a really good job of kind of working through that. I mean, we were present for some like late night shoots where, you know, like they needed certain things to happen. They needed different lighting and things like that, and they had to like adjust their shoots. But it was just like, you know, that kind of technical stuff happens, I think, quite a bit. And it's just, I do know that like somebody from, I think from Sony had like an early, or not, while I was there, and it was right as I was leaving. You know, Paul had done a really like a lot of work to try to get both Maddie and me into the movie. I, against my wishes, kind of was able to film a scene. They ended up getting cut.
Oh,
there was-
shoot.
I was like, I didn't see
I
you.
was like, where was it?
yeah, there was a scene in a bar, and they kept some of the bar scenes in there where
Mhm.
Kevin he like storms out because Rel's trying to get him to have a good time and all this stuff, but he can't do it. But in that scene, I was a bartender, and
Oh, cool.
and it was really cool. Like it wasn't that cool because they gave me like a really tight black t-shirt, and I had to like had to be a bartender. And then and I'm not a man built for a tight shirt. And so they also they were doing their filming the scenes and stuff, and I leaned up against the sink behind the bar and turned on some water in the middle of a scene, and it sounded like Niagara Falls or something.
Oh no.
Oh, no.
But apparently nobody else could hear it.
Oh.
And so they're filming the scene, and I'm like, hey guys, I'm really sorry. And I could see people are like, what the fuck is he doing? And then I realized, oh my God, nobody can hear that I just turned this water on. And so like Paul yells cut, and he comes over, he's like, is everything okay? I'm like, oh man, I'm so sorry. Like I bumped this water thing, and it was pouring water out, and everyone starts laughing. I was like, okay.
Like, don't use me.
Yeah, no, I was like, no, I told you I don't want to be a part of this. But my only goal was to get like Matt. I really wanted Maddie in the movie, and I think it would have been really fun. And so what ended up happening was like we were scheduled to leave, and somebody from Sony called Paul, and they were like, we want you to find an amusement park somewhere in Montreal. We need you to rent it out. We want you to shoot. And they ended up putting some of this in the movie.
Yeah.
We need you to shoot some stuff to kind of like bring it down, like lighten it up a little bit, because it's really dark and depressing sometimes. So we want to like have like a cut scene where they're like having fun in an amusement park, and they're like, cool. And so Paul's like, can you guys stay? Like, it'd be awesome if we can find this thing. And we didn't know if they were going to be able to find an amusement park they could shut down like in the next day or
Yeah. Yeah.
to film, because that's it's a lot of logistics there. And I was like, man, we got to get back. Like Maddie's starting school. Like I'm sorry,
There's
I
a
really
lot.
want to stay. Yeah, and so, but we would have been extras in that for sure had we not, because like I think one of the producing partners' kids was in one of those scenes, and like it was super exciting. And I wish we could have done that, but yeah, it just didn't work out, unfortunately. Yeah. And I'm on the cutting room floor somewhere. Maybe it's on a DVD extra or something. I don't know. Because they did put it on DVD, which I didn't even know they were doing. I just walked into Target one day, and it was at Target.
Did you buy that too?
I did buy it. I was like, I gotta have a couple of these. Yeah, this is weird.
Okay.
So
I gotta run to Target.
Cool. Yeah. I don't know if it's still there. This was like a year ago, but
So the 5 years later part in the movie. So you had said that you put input in on that. Was that all pretty accurate for the most part of how it was with Maddie growing up? Like, so you said the tomboy part and everything like that. Did she well, I guess the in-law part wasn't accurate. Was any of that accurate? Like
yeah, a lot of it was.
Okay.
It wasn't fully accurate. Like so I mentioned to you guys before we started recording that I'm remarried to a screenwriter, actually. She's you might want to talk to her sometime.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I don't know how much you know about her, but she's been a writer on Bob's Burgers forever. She has her own show called The Great North with her sister that they show run, and they've been writing on. She's actually out on the picket lines right now. I was with her yesterday. It was great.
Awesome.
And she just did a movie. She adapted a book into a movie. Which came on.
We want to talk to her.
Yes.
You should. She, your sister, you can't see it, but there's like behind the ladder are some popcorn boxes.
Oh, okay.
When we saw it. But they did it's a movie that ended up on Amazon called The People We Hate at the Wedding. It was adapted from a book with the same title. They didn't have to change the title.
Okay.
And anyway, so
were you jealous they didn't have to change the title?
Actually, I was kind of cool. I was like cool with the title too, because that was the other thing. Was like the change of title in the book and the movie also meant that, like, I think again, you have to have a really healthy distance from this process, right? You have to know that you can't control all of it, and that you have to be okay with what comes out. And if you're not, that's your own fault for agreeing to sell it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I thought like there was that added insurance policy that like if this was really horrible, that it had a totally different name than the book. And this is before I knew they were going to change the title of my book. So there wasn't necessarily going to be an association. and there is, and it was fine, and everything's great. But you know, I do think it's like, so it was kind of a cool thing that they changed it actually, and I really like that they did. You know, it's very simple, and it's I think it's like, I don't know, it's kind of fun that they did it. I was surprised, but I'm glad that they did it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you. I was still
No, it's fine. It's perfect. No, it's great. But yeah, so and this was all to say that, like, so, you know, in the movie, it shows me meeting somebody at a birthday party. That's not how it happened. Our story of meeting is actually more unbelievable. And I think that, like, and Dana knew this. I mean, she'd like come to other things. Like I mentioned, I wrote another book. I wrote a kid's book too. And when we had a release party for my kids' book, we went to, like, my wife now, her friend ran a brewery in downtown LA. So of course we're gonna have a kids' book, like picture book release party in a brewery. And so Dana came with her son, who's now in college, and is he's gonna do some amazing, watch for this guy at some point, John Apted. His dad was a famous director and all this stuff.
cool.
He just went to NYU and film school and all that stuff, and he's gonna do some incredible stuff. But Dana's son, who was like 15 at the time, came to my book release party with Dana and with his mom, and got to meet everybody and you know, kind of see all this stuff. But anyway, that's just like an aside to say that, like, shit, where was I going with this? I don't
how you
meeting
met
Liz.
Yeah.
Meeting Lizzie. So my current wife's name is Lizzie, by the way, which is really fun.
Yes, I
hard
was
to
like,
describe to people. So, you know,
They're
Dana
like, no.
Dana got to know her and got to meet her. And the way I met Lizzie actually was on an airplane. We were flying, just happened to be flying. If you've ever flown Southwest, you know that, like, you kind of get to choose your seats based on your boarding order. And I was traveling with Maddie, and at that time, well, actually my in-laws paid for the ticket, but I had upgraded us to get on first, because I was like, I don't want to have the situation happen where, like, Maddie's like, you know, whatever she was, 5 or 6.
Yeah.
But that ticket also comes with a glass of wine.
Oh.
And so anyway, I'm sitting, as I always did with Maddie, in the middle seat, because Maddie had to have the window seat.
Yep.
And as the plane's filling up, you know, there's all these people getting on and everything, and this, you know, beautiful young woman, like, she's like, is anybody sitting here? And I'm like, no, you can sit down. So she sits down. And it was clearly there was not too many other seats, but also the way she describes it later was like, well, he's with a kid, so he's probably married, and he's not going to bother me. Either that,
he's
or
not gonna.
Bag.
Yes.
And so anyway, so, like, Maddie started talking to her. That's what ended up happening. I had no interest. I was actually, I was in a relationship at the time. It wasn't going well, and I was it was the end, but I had no interest in her. I really, like, it was just like, oh, she's sitting
like,
there. It was
yes,
fine.
you're safe here. It's okay.
Yes, you're safe. It's like, she's very pretty, but whatever. Like, I don't, you know, I'm still trying to get out of this other thing, and it was bad. But Maddie was talking to her because she was watching a cartoon, and then it came up that this woman sitting there was also, she worked on a cartoon show, and I didn't know anything about it. I'd never seen it. Terrible. Anyway, so, but it was like this whole conversation that happened on an airplane, and then we both got off the plane, and it was like, you know, I didn't get her name, I didn't get her phone number, I had no idea who she was. And I just happened to say something to a friend of mine. I was like, yeah, you know, on the flight to wherever, Oakland, or where we were flying to, it was Oakland from Burbank. I said, like, oh yeah, I was talking to this lady. Don't you have a friend that works on this show? And he's like, yeah, my friend Holly works on the show. And I was like, oh, tell her I met this woman named Lizzie on the plane. And that was it. And then, like,
wow.
You know, 9 months later or something like that, or 6 months. Yeah, it was about 9 months later. My other relationship ended. Everything was a mess, and I ended up catching up with Lizzie again. We connected via, like, you know, Instagram, and then we started dating, and that was
Oh
it.
my
So,
gosh!
Wow.
yeah, it was really fascinating. But yeah, so that's all to say again that, like, we met on an airplane, and I think that was, like, too much of a meet cute, you know, for, like, a movie. And so they're like, oh, we're gonna make this a setup at a birthday party, and it'll be a lot easier, you know. And so that was one big change. I think that wasn't, like, totally accurate. You know, I think they did a pretty good job of, like, depicting me as, like, a bumbling dad, especially at the beginning. And I think, like, a lot of times dads get depicted that way in movies, and whether or not it's good or bad, I don't know. I do think that all parents are like that, like,
absolutely.
women too. It's like, and I think that's why I was cool with that being left in, because with your first kid especially, everybody is confused. Like
Mhm.
everybody has a hard
Mhm.
time. And I know that like people talk about like women having sort of an innate sense and all that stuff. And I believe to a certain extent that exists, but not for everything.
No.
It's not 100% across the board for all children and all parents. And so I really like the idea that they kind of kept in some of that struggle and that screwing stuff up. And they gave Kevin a lot of legs to kind of be comedic and be funny. And I think that was
Yeah.
really
Mhm.
nice.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite scenes is when he goes. I'm not going to remember it well, but he goes to the like. I think it's the mom group, and he tries to
yeah,
go and
the
be
parent
in the
group.
mom group, and they're like, "No, you can't." And he's like,
Yeah.
he gets all angry.
He's
I
like,
love
I
that.
gave her colic. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's so cute.
So he says,
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
it's very funny because that's based on some reality too.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't go to like a physical mom group, but like,
Yeah.
because everything was so like online back then, especially
Yeah.
like I'd been writing this blog and then some people in the LA area had reached out to me and there was I can't remember what it was called, but there was a moms group that was online that was obviously they were talking about like mom issues. It was breastfeeding and all sorts of stuff that
Mhm.
I think some women maybe were a little uncomfortable with having a man
Yeah.
involved, which I get. It's totally fine. And I didn't know this was happening. It was all behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I was begging to get in.
Right.
Right.
Please
There were a
let me
couple
in.
yeah, but there were a couple of moms who were trying to get me to become a part of this group because they were like, yes, this is a group for moms, but he doesn't have a woman in his life, and he's
Right.
Mhm.
kind of playing both roles. And they thought like, the importance of getting me helpful information about the community and about doctors or whatever I needed around here would outweigh the sort of concerns that some of the women might have about stuff
Yeah.
that they might be talking about. They'd be uncomfortable talking about in front of a man. But ultimately I didn't get voted in. And so
Darn.
another woman and some of the other women from the group kind of created their own little thing. And it was a very short-lived thing, but like we got together in some parks around here and went for coffee and things like that. And it was really wonderful. And so I did have those experiences where like I had people I could talk to. But again, all of this was, I mean, and they were in person for a little bit, but most of those interactions were kind of online, So it was kind of interesting, but I did like that they left that in there because I did have some of those experiences that were kind of fun.
What was your favorite part about all of this? Like about your whole experience with the book, the movie getting adapted, all of it.
There's it's weird. There's like some validation to it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like it means that like what happened to Liz and what happened to our family will kind of live on, in a
Mhm.
way. And it's silly because it's going to live on no matter what. Like Maddie will tell a story. If she has kids someday, she'll tell them about it. And
Mhm.
what does it matter, right? Like, what does a book matter? What does a movie matter? In real life, it means nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm just the same guy that I always have been. Like nothing changed in my life. People used to call me all the time and say like, "What's it like to have a movie about your life?" It's like I don't know. I'm still taking out my own trash. Like I'm still changing the
Still a
diapers on my
person.
kids. Yeah, I'm still
Yeah.
doing all this stuff. Like this hasn't made me rich beyond my wildest dreams, and I can't relate to humans anymore. And I live on a yacht.
Right.
Like maybe that would make things different for me. But like, I think what I love about it is just like it's kind of weird, but like I was never a writer before this. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. I just wrote, and
Yeah.
then here we are. I mean, I finished my book in 2010, came out 2011, and it was 10 years later they made a movie. A movie was out about my book,
Mhm.
and I didn't expect any of it. I didn't want any of it. But one of the things I learned after my wife died was I had to start saying yes to more things.
Mhm.
Don't look at me.
I
I'm
know
not
someone
telling you
who
what to
needs
do.
that.
I'm not telling you what to do, but I
No,
will
that's
tell
my
you
issue too. Don't worry.
what I did. And what I learned was that I think especially in the situation you find yourself in where like, your husband dies riding a motorcycle. My wife died after giving birth. And your instinct, I think, as a human being is to protect what's left, right? My instinct was to never leave the house with my child and to never go anywhere and to never let her out of my sight and create a little bubble where we would both be safe and nothing would ever happen to us. And if that meant shutting everybody out, that's what was going to happen. But I acted against every instinct I ever had, and I did the exact opposite.
Uh-huh.
Because it wasn't going to be a life well lived if we were just in the house all the time and we locked ourselves away. And I made sure that we did the things that I used to do with Liz, because for me, I'd been with her for, 12 years or whatever at that point. I've got to do the math. I've forgotten some of this, but around 12 years.
I think it was 12 because that was
Yeah.
how long I was with my
Okay.
husband too. And I was like,
I'm glad you remember. So yeah, it was like a little over 12 years, and we'd done so much together in that time. I mean, we
Mhm.
traveled the world together. We lived in LA at that point. I moved there in 2002, and she died in 2008. So I've been in LA with her for 6 years. So we had a house together I couldn't sell. I couldn't just up and move to Minnesota and be with my family and stuff. And so there was literally no place I could go in my community, or frankly on earth for the most part,
Mhm.
that didn't have some memory of her or some tie to
Mhm.
her. Even if I hadn't been there with her, it was a place we'd talked about going. If I go to Egypt, it was a place we'd always wanted to go visit
Right.
together. So
Mm-hmm.
so I thought about that a lot, and I was like, I can't escape this. Like, there's no like, if I go to the moon, maybe I can escape this, but there's nowhere else I can go where I cannot feel this at some level. And so I just decided I'm going to run to it instead of away
Mhm.
from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep going to the same grocery store we went to,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
because I can't. It's too hard to drive
You're
across
not going
town
to
to go to
drive.
a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, practically speaking, it's like Maddie needs diapers. I'm not going to drive to
Right.
the other Target because
Going on a road trip,
this one
Maddie.
has memories. Right. It was like, shit, this is an emergency. We need to get this figured out. So, and then that led me to like really start saying like, okay, well, we're gonna throw all caution in the wind. We're gonna travel all the time. And we started, I wrote a good portion of my book in India
Oh,
while
cool.
I was
Wow.
we just went on a trip because I'd been there a bunch for work and I knew a lot of people, and this
Yeah.
wasn't like an eat, pray, love kind of thing. It was like I needed to physically get away from
Mhm.
my friends and family who would just pop in at all hours and different times. And I needed a physical distance and a time difference where like people couldn't just call me,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because I was 12 hours
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
And so 12 and a half hours away. And so it was like, it really helped me to concentrate on this thing. And so, yeah, it wasn't a journey of self-discovery, sadly. It was just a journey of, it wasn't a journey at all. It was just to get the hell out of town so that
Yeah.
nobody could bother me and I could write. So, anyway.
I
love
will
it.
say I had never like thought about traveling to India until the bits and pieces that you put in your book about your trips there. I was like, oh, that actually sounds like a really cool place to
Mm.
go see.
Uh-huh.
One of my favorite places on earth. I've been there
Oh, wow.
7 times now, and
Wow.
we've been talking about it with my wife now. We're planning to take Maddie there before she graduates, because she hasn't
Mhm.
been since she was like just under 2.
Oh wow.
And so she has no memory, but we're going to take her before she graduates from high school, which is just fucking crazy that she's going to graduate.
Graduate.
Yeah,
couple
I
that
know.
is
years.
I'm
crazy.
like, no, she's only one.
Yeah, she's only 1, and plus 14, and she just finished her freshman year of high school, and it's nuts.
Crazy.
But yeah, so we're planning to go back there and do the whole
Mhm.
trip with the family. As I mentioned at the beginning, I've got 2 other little daughters,
Mhm.
and so they'll be somewhat older and they'll be ready to hopefully join us on the trip. And
How
so it'll be fun.
fun.
Yeah, it'll
Yeah,
be fun.
definitely.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
If you could do anything different with the adaptation, would you, or are you pretty happy with how it all turned out?
I'm really happy with the adaptation. I think I look back at this a lot, and I think if I had my way, I maybe never would have written my blog in the first place.
Really?
Really?
I would have killed all of this from the beginning. I come from a long line of self-saboteurs, I guess you could say. There's a whole line of fatalism that runs through most of my life, and so I expect little. I didn't do this to get famous or to have a movie made about me. I literally started writing my blog for Maddie and for my family to know that that we were okay,
Mhm.
and that's why it existed.
Mm-hmm.
I never in a million years dreamed it would ever turn into this. And if I had done it, had I thought this was going to happen, I never would have done it.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It was too scary of a prospect to think that somebody might make a movie of my life. I would have said no
Yeah.
to that immediately. I never
Yeah.
would have never thought it. And there's so much, I think, as time goes on. It's like, there was an article in the Atlantic, I haven't finished reading yet, but about the dangers of like having your children online and stuff like that. And
Oh yeah.
and sharing so much about them and stories of older kids, because that generation is now becoming older. Maddie's 15.
Yeah.
So far our experience has been really positive, thankfully. I
Good.
mean, we had,
Good.
there was stuff before she was old enough to know about it that was, people were, why are you letting her dress like a boy?
Yeah.
And why is she have short hair?
Mm.
Just terrible, stuff that
Yeah.
That's horrible.
it's not that she's not aware of. We've talked about it before, and
Yeah.
the thing has always been like, I just love you no matter what. Doesn't matter what happens. But there's things like that. There was a blogger who was active at the time. I mean, she was the blogger who was active at the time that I was. She went by Deuce, and she just died by suicide recently.
Oh.
And I knew her a little bit. Like, she followed me on Instagram. She'd kind of had some struggles over the last couple of years with addiction, and said some pretty transphobic stuff that I couldn't deal with. And so I'd cut off any
Yeah.
thought about her a while back. But anyway, just like her death has made me think about a lot of this stuff too, and like think about like, what were we all doing back then? What were we doing
Yeah.
in the early 2000s? Why were we sharing this stuff, and what was the goal here? And I think
Right.
everyone's kind of short-sighted when there's new technology. We don't think about how it's going to impact us or our kids or whatever. And for me, mine started out so innocently. It's like, I just wanted to share this stuff with my family, and I wanted Maddie to be able to look back at it someday. Before I thought I'd have a book, she needed some ability to know her mom. And after her mom died, my worry was always going to be like, what if I got hit by a bus? Before Maddie had memories of her own, what if I, died suddenly and she was left without either of her parents? Like, how is she going to get to know us? How is she going to get to know her mom? And so that was the only goal. And now that she's 15 and I'm almost 46 and I'm still alive, knock on wood, I don't feel that immense need to have like chronicled all of it for her, because I can tell her about it.
Yeah.
But I was so terrified of dying and leaving her alone that's what drove me to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And now that I'm here, I kind of feel like I wish I hadn't done it.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing to say. It's like it's not looking the gift horse in the mouth. It's like literally kicking the gift horse in the mouth and saying, get the fuck out of here. And I feel like a true asshole for saying this, because it's so many people's dreams to write a book, or or to make a movie, or to have some notoriety of some sort. But this was not my dream. I didn't want any of this, and I wish I didn't have it. I would have traded it all for Liz, just for a few minutes with her.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of great things happen since she died, and it sounds weird when I say it this way, but I thank her for all of it. You know what I mean? Like the life that I have now is a result of her. Being remarried is a result of her. Having 2 more kids is a result of her. And I'm thankful for all of it. I'm thankful for the relationships I maintain with her family and some of her friends. And I'm the luckiest guy in the world in a lot of ways, and I wish I didn't have any of it. So what I would have done differently, if you need a short snippet, is I would have done it all differently. I would have never done any of this stuff. So
we hope you're okay with being on our podcast, even though you didn't want to.
Listen, these things happen in time, right? These things happen in history, and you can't change them, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a parallel universe thing going on. I just saw the new Spider-Man movie, and
I'm seeing that tonight.
it's great. Maddie's seen it twice. She made us go see it with her this week. It's really it's incredible. It's
I'm excited.
It's like one of the best movies you ever see.
Sweet.
So yeah, maybe in some parallel universe I could change it all, and it would be different. But the fact that it is this means that I want to embrace it. I like I said at the beginning, like, I'm surprised anybody wants to talk to me. This movie's been out for 2 years. My book's been out for 13 years at this point, I guess, or 12 years at this point. I'm thankful that you guys wanted to talk to me about it. I think it's really cool that anybody cares. I hope that people listen to it, listen to your podcast and hear more of these stories, because I think it is fascinating. I mean, I think even people who've been following me on Instagram for 12 years or whatever probably don't know some of this stuff, and they maybe don't know exactly how I feel about some of these things. You know, it's weird to live your life in this way and to be
I bet.
kind of online, but frankly, like, it's not, none of it's real. None
Right.
of
Yep.
having a movie made about my life is not real. Writing a book is not real. None of this in my day-to-day existence, none of this exists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sounds weird to say, but like, I don't define myself as, when I go to a doctor's office and they ask me for my occupation, I put homemaker in there. When I meet a lot of people, I meet a lot of people through my wife's work, you know,
Yeah.
like famous people whose level I should feel like I'm trying to be on.
Yeah.
And when they ask me what I do, I don't say, oh, I wrote a book and I made
Do you remember Fatherhood?
Yeah, have you heard of Kevin Hart? He played me in a movie. Like, that's not my, if I have enough drinks, maybe I'll say it. But my go-to is always like, oh, I'm a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
You know, that's what defines my life. That's what makes me feel good as a person. None of the rest of this exists in my everyday reality. It just doesn't. My wife is a very accomplished screenwriter and TV writer and all this stuff, but she doesn't define herself by that. Like, she talks about being a mom and being a friend and being a really fun person. And I've learned so much about her. Like, with all the success she's had, none of it matters.
No.
You know, none of it matters. It helps afford, you know, a house and a remodel that we're doing and all this stuff that we have, all these books, you know, she's paid for and stuff, because I don't work anymore. But none of it matters. None of this, when you're dead, it doesn't matter. You know, what have you done for your friends? What have you done for your family? What have you done for your kids? What kind of legacy have you left? That's not about a movie or a book or even a podcast or anything. It's about, how have you touched people? How have you interacted with people? How have you made their lives better? And like I said, I got a phone call from a friend of mine just before this podcast, and she had me in tears. She was just calling to say thanks. She's been through some really rough stuff over the last couple of years, and to hear her say what she had to say to me out of the blue. I mean, it's a Thursday afternoon morning here in LA. I don't know why she's calling. I answered her call because I don't know if it's an emergency or she just wants to tell me a story about some band she heard last night. But I answer the call because I care about her. She's one of my best friends in the whole world. And to be here, you know, 20 minutes before I'm talking to you as I'm trying to prepare for this, got me in tears. And I'm like,
you're like, how dare you?
But I told her, I'm like, but that's what matters. Like, that our friendship is what matters. It doesn't matter that you insulted me the first time you met me and told me I was, you know, that I was a fucking nobody or whatever, that I didn't deserve to be on Oprah and that she did. She was right. She was right about it all, because I'm not special. I'm not anybody other than just a normal guy who had some bad stuff happen, and through a whole lot of privilege was granted the ability to do these things. And if that's the only thing I can get people to understand about where I sit in my current life and where I've sat throughout my life since Liz died, especially, I hope that's what they get out of this, is that this is not, you know, I wrote a kid's book because my friend kept threatening me that if I had this dumb idea, and she's like, if you don't go to your agent, I'm going to go to your agent. We're going to do it. And it just, everything in my life is about saying no. And then I have to tell myself, I have to say yes, because you never know where it's going to lead you. And I wrote this other book, and it was really fun, but I never dreamed I would do it. And I guess what I'm getting at is, it's just like, none of it matters. I want to make sure Maddie's happy. I'm taking her to the mall with her friends so they can go bowling and play some video games, and I live for it. I absolutely live to do this stuff. And I'm so excited that she gets to do it. And then we have the ability to make sure that she can have $30 to go bowling today, you know? I feel really lucky in spite of everything that's happened. And it's not because of a movie. It's not because of a book. That's not why I feel lucky. I feel lucky that I still have people that love me. I feel lucky that I still have a lot of people that let me love them. And I'm glad that I have great friends that will call me up on a Thursday and tell me how much I mean to them. That's, you know, what else is there?
That's what life's about.
Love it. It was at Cameron's funeral. It was like on social media, you know, all the posts about how great he is, and like people who got up and talked about him. And all my thoughts were like, if he only knew. It's like, why do we wait and share it at people's funeral and not tell them? Because he suffered from depression and all this. And part of the reason was because he's like, I feel like a nobody. Like, why? Like, what am I here for? Well, I mean, besides us. And
but that's hard, right? That's an existential thought. Like, what are we here for? What is all of this?
And it's so now it's like my goal is, instead of waiting for your funeral on your birthday or any random day, I'll be like, oh my gosh, you should just, my life wouldn't be the same without you, and say something positive. And it's
my favorite texts that I get are just from like, I have a lot of friends who live out of state, and they'll just send me a random text any time of day. And it's just, Bree, I love you. You're one of my best friends. Thanks for life. And I'm like,
just a simple thank you.
Isn't that that's exactly what it should be. Like, you know, I'm a big believer in telling people you love them, you know? My dad, who's a big, tough construction worker guy, used to be on job sites. He'd be on the phone. Every time he'd say, I love you, you know, say it to my mom every time I got a phone with her, all this stuff. And I think men especially are just, you know, cliche idiots, don't want to say that stuff. But
I'm glad you said it.
No, it's true. And I say it all the time. I tell my kids all the time how much I love them. I tell Maddie all the time. Every time before she goes to bed, I tell her how much I love her. These things are important. And I wish I were making up that story about my friend, but she literally called me right before you guys. And I truly didn't know why she was calling. And it's such an amazing thing to have somebody that's willing to call you up and just say, hey, you mean a lot to me. Like, you know, I've had a lot of things happen that have been bad, and you're one of the good things. And like, you know, I've had to say that to my wife lately. Like, you know, she's on strike, and we're a whole lot of expenses right now, and she's not getting paid. And
that sucks.
You know, and she's feeling a lot of pressure because I don't, you know, my work is in the house. I don't get paid for it. And so she's got a lot of pressure to provide for everything, for, you know, a remodel, a rental, a mortgage, a second mortgage, just eating, you know, my books and all the other things I buy. You know, and she feels a lot of pressure, but I've had to tell her, like, we'll figure this out no matter what happens. If you lose your job, they cancel your show, you never get another movie, like, we're all alive, we're all going to be fine. We'll figure it out. We have to move to a smaller house, we have to sell our house as a construction zone, whatever. We'll figure it out. None of it matters as long as we're together and we can find some happiness. And honestly, you know, I've gotten to spend a lot more time with her over the course of the strike. She's been on strike for a little over a month now. And normally at night, she's in front of a computer working after the kids go to bed, after we have dinner. She's working till midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever. All during the day, she's working. She's working on weekends. She's got her phone. If she's not working, she's getting texts from her sister, who she works with, or colleagues or whatever. And to see her over the last month not be in front of a computer at all, and to not see her getting constant texts and emails, has been like such an important part of our life and our relationship. And to see her happy, not working, has been so cool. And again, this is proof to me that she doesn't define herself by these successes she's had. She defines herself and her happiness by how much time she's been able to spend with her kids since she's been on this strike, and how much time she's been able to spend with me. And what the studios don't seem to realize is that she'll do this forever.
I think, you know, studios are dumb sometimes.
They're very dumb. I saw a guy yesterday holding a sign at the picket lines that said, do you guys have Sweet Green where you
No, what is that?
It's like one of those like fast salad places. You know, it's like a step above fast food, but it's like salads you can pick. This guy had a sign that said, I hate Sweet Green, so I can do this forever. Because Hollywood writers get their lunches brought in, you know, it's like part of the union. They get free lunches, but they're limited in scope and what can be delivered or what their assistants can deliver, get picked up for them. And so this guy's making a point saying, like, I hate
You're giving me
so
Sweet
much.
Green all the time.
If you ever want content again, you better figure this out, because I can pick it forever. And that's the thing my wife is saying, is that I love being home with my family so much that I don't care if I ever go back. Yes, I'm gonna have to start working at Starbucks or something. I have no skills other than I make her coffee sometimes, so maybe I can do that. I'd have to learn a lot for sure.
You're like, is there a Keurig?
I mean, that's my skill. So I don't know what I was saying, but you know, I do think that, like, I'm a very lucky guy, and I'm very lucky to have the people that I have in my life who do understand what's most important, and I'm thankful for it.
Good.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're on to our wrap-up questions now.
Oh, great. Great.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. What has been your favorite book to film adaptation?
My favorite one, I have to say, my wife's book to film adaptation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The People We Hate the Wedding. I would say, and that's kind of a cop out. And like, of course, I'm gonna love my wife's adaptation. But it's better than saying my own book to film adaptation.
Yeah.
And I do genuinely think that her adaptation of this book is really good. The book is amazing. Their adaptation is great.
Awesome.
It's got Kristen Bell's in it, Allison Janney.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's a great cast.
It's a great cast. It didn't get the best reviews, but I think sometimes comedies don't often get great
People We
reviews.
Hate at the Wedding. Is this the one where like they're sitting at a table and like it's all the people that like were invited but not invited, or like?
Yeah, kind of. It's like the family is like just terrible.
Seen this.
Yeah, you may have. It's really it's great.
The movie.
Go back and watch it. Yeah, if you want to talk to my wife, I'll make sure she does your podcast.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It'll be the other side of it.
Flip.
But,
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I really did enjoy it, and I think it's such a funny movie, and I'm glad that they got the chance to write it. So
we're adding it to our list now.
Yes.
Yeah, do it. Everybody else too. It's great.
Do you have a least favorite? Like, do you think adaptation where they just screwed up the movie or they
shouldn't have even
it?
touched it?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know how to pronounce this either, so I apologize in advance. It's either the Family Fang or the Family Fong. Did you guys ever see this?
No.
So Jason Bateman made this movie probably like, it must have been like 2012 or 2015. I don't know, it was sometime a while back. But the book is amazing. The book is really, really good. It's the same title. I would say if you get a chance, read the book. It's just awesome. And it's kind of about what we were talking about in terms of like kids who were brought into their parents' like stupidity in a certain way. And I don't want to give too much of the book away, but I think it's a really well written book. I love the book so much. Somebody gave it to me probably as a warning about it's about being online.
You're a parent now.
Well, somebody if I can remember, I can't remember who gave it to me, but somebody was like, this reminds me of you. And I was like, and I read it and I was like, oh shit, is that good or bad? But anyway, you read it and you tell me what you think. But I really think the book was great. I think the movie was terrible. And and I hate to say that about anything. I don't want to judge somebody else's art, but the movie was not as good as the book for sure.
Yeah. I've had a few of those on our podcast already where I'm like, I'm sorry to say this, but this was horrible.
Yeah. No, it happens sometimes. So
Is there a book that you wish would get adapted into a movie?
Oh my God, so many. I have, and I'm not going to say it right now because I have my wife reading a book that I read last year, I think. And I'm trying
to. You got an in. You could just be like, I love this book. Can you
make it, please?
That's what I do all the time. I'm like, I have one that I want you to adapt. And and I saw her sister at we were at their parents' house for like some event a couple weeks ago, and I cornered her. She was talking to me about some stuff. And I was like, get your sister to finish this book and you read it, and then I want you guys to turn this into something. It might be more of like a limited series. I don't know if you guys have seen like Yellow Jackets or something like that. Something along that vein. Anyway, so I'm not gonna tell you the title because I don't want anybody else to grab this. But if this ever happens, we'll come back, we'll do your podcast. I'll talk about how I made my wife and her sister do this, because
we'll take it.
I think the book is absolutely brilliant. I can tell you after we're done recording. I'll tell you what it is so you can read it, because the book is, I think it's one of my favorite books I've read ever, but it's definitely the best book I've read in the last 5 years.
Awesome.
And so hopefully they can adapt it. So that's one. But I can tell you, I was grabbing books. I read a lot of translated stuff just because I find that to be fun. I like to. I'm trying to read stuff that's not just like, especially like white men in America. Most of these are probably white men in Europe, but anyway,
at least it's on America.
I've been trying to vary my reading a bit, but anyway, there's a couple, like there's this author, he's Norwegian, I think, named John Fosse, and he's a playwright, and he writes a lot of like short stories and stuff, but I think his writing is incredibly evocative of like, I've not been to Norway, but I feel like I grew up in Minnesota, so I kind of get it a little bit. But it's like, you can feel like the coldness and the dampness of the place and all of his, and every one of his books.
Yeah.
But one of my favorites is called Alyssa at the Fire.
Okay.
And it's a short book. And I think it'd be a really good like independent film somebody could make, and maybe a short film or something, but it's beautifully written. It's super, like, it just feels dark, you know, it just feels
Yeah.
dark.
I love books like
And,
that.
yeah, and like all of his books I've ever read have just been wonderful. He wrote one called Morning and Evening, which is about a guy dying, and then, you know, kind of that transition of a baby being born, and like, you know, so there's always been that
Oh,
thing about
cool.
like when somebody dies, another person is born.
Oh
and,
yeah. Yep.
and so it's just that kind of thing. And his description of this guy dying is one of my favorite things I've ever read. Just
Wow, really?
yeah, it's just incredible. Like, just the feeling of your last day on earth, and just how
Yeah.
everything stops working. Like, it was a slow thing, it wasn't a quick death like
Yeah.
a lot of people have experienced, but it's a fascinating read. And so I highly recommend any of his books. I just think that they're beautiful. And then the one that I think should definitely be made into a movie, and I think could do really great if it hasn't been done yet, it's called Zone, by this
Okay.
French writer named Matthias Enard. And it's about a spy who's like getting out of the game, and he's like taking a train to the Vatican to like turn over all these documents he has. And he's just like, I'm
Whoa.
gonna turn this in, and he feels bad for all the stuff he's ever done. And the book is written in such a like a propulsive way. There's like no punctuation.
Oh, whoa.
So
Okay.
it's just one long sentence. I think there's a part, if I got this, I'm not very smart, but I think in the middle there is some punctuation. I think it might be him dreaming.
Oh.
So there's like one section in the middle of the
Oh,
book.
that's interesting.
It's like a 500 page.
Wow.
It's a dense ass book. But it's so wonderful, and it reads so fast because there's no punctuation.
Yeah.
And I read this not long after it came out. It's probably like 10 years ago. And I still maintain this is one of my favorite books of all time.
Wow.
And it's not for everybody because of the lack of punctuation, but like I felt like at a time when I was writing my blog, when I didn't use punctuation and I didn't capitalize things, like it was really neat to see something kind of like that, and to see it work in a way that was like,
you're like, hey, people are probably reading this.
yeah, and it made sense. And it made sense in the story too, because it's just this train ride, and he's just pulling, you know, stuff in, and it felt fast, and it felt just beautiful. And so I recommend this book to everybody I know, and I don't think any one of them have ever read it.
Oh, I will.
Because it's really it's a daunting task, so to speak, but I love it so much. And I think if you're into, like, if you've ever seen like the Jason Bourne movies or anything, it's kind of like a more boring version of that, because it's just on the train. But the things he describes having been a part of are really fascinating and really cool.
Okay.
And so Matthias Enard is the guy's name.
Okay, thank you.
And he's amazing. He's written a bunch of other books that are great too. And then and then John Fosse, who I think like you should read any of his books. Most of them are really short. These are beautiful. These are all so beautiful, and they've all been re-released by like maybe New Directions or something. So they have like new covers on some of them. And then one last one, because I just love this book too. It's called Empty the Sun by this guy named Joseph Mattson.
I like that cover too.
So this comes, if you can find a copy of it, comes with a CD of original music.
Cool.
By a really cool guy named Ben Chastney, who's he's in a band called like Six Organs of Admittance, and he's done some. It's like it's all, you know, it's wordless, you know, sort of music, and it's beautiful, but it's a soundtrack to the book, and it's really cool.
Wow,
so this also came out probably like 12 or 13, maybe 15 years ago. I have no idea. But I read it, and it's very much a time and place. I don't know if you've ever, I'd happened to visit the place that's described in the beginning of the book just weeks before I read this, just by coincidence.
Yeah.
And so it was like really weird to have been there and then read about it. And this guy is a really interesting guy. He's from LA. I at one point wanted to, I mentioned him on a blog or something about how I wanted to meet him. He was like one of the few authors alive that I wanted to meet. And he contacted me, and I got so freaked out when he did that I didn't respond to him. I was like, what would I say to this guy? I wanted to meet,
but no.
Yeah, he's like, I was like, you figure it's never going to happen. I'm like, he's too cool. I can't talk to this guy. So anyway, yeah, he I never met him, but he's gone through some stuff. He's had like cancer and stuff, and I think he's kind of quit writing, but he's like he writes so beautifully. It's really, it's pretty dark stuff. Again, you can see where I tend to go with this stuff. And it's, you know, these are just like unsavory LA characters, you know, like Bukowski and things like that. So, but it's
It's a wonderful book. I love it so much. So anyway,
That's awesome.
those are the three that I think I would love to see. They'll never get made ever. But hopefully, and then I'll tell you about the other one when we hang up. So
Okay.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
yeah.
And then, do you have a movie that you wish would turn into a book, like have more detail and stuff like that?
Oh God, that's a great question. I don't watch a ton of movies, to be honest.
Mhm.
Like it's and I saw this as a question you guys might ask me, and I thought about it so much, and I cannot. I honestly can't think of one. I don't
That's
know. I
fair.
don't know. Do you have any example of a good one that you guys?
I was gonna say it's our question. I don't even have an answer. So do you?
It's a hard one. It's a really hard one.
Yeah. You're more of the movie buff.
I really am. Actually, I've got one.
Okay.
Just because I love the story, I think I would like to see the characters in a paperback or hardback pages. There we go.
Okay.
The Rover. Did you ever watch The Rover?
No, I never saw that.
It's with Guy Pearce and Robert Pattinson, and it's an Australian director. I can't remember his name. It's a name that I don't even think I can pronounce. But it's like this dystopian future where this guy, his dog has died and he wants to bury it properly, but because it's dystopian, like there's no vegetation or anything, it's all desert land. But then his car gets stolen. So then this whole movie is just about him trying to go get his car. And so I think I would like that as a book.
Interesting.
Now that you mention this, I think my wife is really into those movies.
Yeah.
And I think she
Those are my
probably has seen this. Yeah, I always fall asleep in movies, so she sometimes watches things without me. But I did not fall asleep in the Spider-Verse movie. So
good.
That's a ringing endorsement from a 46-year-old
Hey.
man who falls asleep everywhere. I get a dark space. So
Spider-Man's my favorite, so I'm gonna take my kids to it this week.
they're gonna absolutely love it. It's mind-blowingly beautiful and just like so cool.
Good.
And
That's
it's
my
good for
favorite
adults
part.
too.
I love that it looks like comic books. That's my favorite
I
part
love
about those
that.
animation style.
Mhm.
Yeah, those guys, Lord and Miller, are they're like geniuses.
Mhm.
So it's my wife is like, she walked out of there and she was like, I will never make anything that good. And I was like,
Oh.
no, I'm like, you will. She's like, no, those guys are geniuses. I'll never make anything that good. I'm like, just you will. And even if you don't, this is one of the best movies of all time. Like I had to give her this like talk where I'm like, you know, like even though like I wrote this book and like it's great, it's like it's out, like it did fine, whatever, like it's an important thing, but like it's not the best book ever written. And anybody who tells me that it is definitely has never read a book before, besides mine. And if they tell me it's the worst book ever written, well then they also haven't read too many books, because I know my book there's
quite a few.
In the history of books, my book is somewhere probably in the middle. It's not the best, it's not the worst. And I said, anything you create is probably going to be that. But the fact that you created it is so amazing and so important. But then she's like, but I want that.
I want to be at that level.
Yeah, I want to do that. And she's actually done some work with those guys before. So
Come on.
like, and they were shooting a pilot for it didn't end up going, but they were shooting a pilot when Lord Miller were filming what was it called, Last Man on Earth with Will Forte.
Yeah.
They were filming that on the same same soundstage and using I think the house or something. So actually, in my wife's show, Will Forte is one of the actors or one of the voice actors. And so they got to, they'd done some work with him before, but they got to see him on the set and they talked to Lord Miller. So like, there's this whole thing where like, they've done some work with them, but now they're like, they did the Lego movie, I think, and they're doing all this stuff and it's just incredible. So she does care about her job a little bit, I guess, sometimes when she's like, I want that. I want to create
that level, but she won't let it define her.
Yeah, I'm like, but you're doing amazing. And so anyway, it's very funny. So
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, you sort of answered this one. Favorite book? Was that one of the three, or do you have a different favorite book?
I have so many favorites. One of those three is probably right up there. There's more John Fosse books. I'm trying to look and see what I've got here. I read after Liz died, I couldn't read any like nonfiction stuff. I just couldn't do it. And so I was reading a lot of fiction, which I like a lot of like history books and things like that. When I say I don't watch movies, I really only watch documentaries. And it's not because I'm like a smart guy or anything. It's just that's what holds my attention. I need something to like keep me going. So I was not reading a lot of history and like other biographies and things like that after Liz died. I didn't want that to influence my writing either. So I read so much fiction. I read a lot of poetry. So I got really into this guy from Minneapolis named, not from Minneapolis, but is buried there now and taught there for a while, but named John Berryman. And his poetry is really weird. So I some of his books, Dream Songs is like a lot to read, but it's really great. And I think it won the Pulitzer a long time ago, but it's a beautiful book and probably not right for the times anymore, but it's a really great book. So that kind of stuff. I'm trying to think what else, but yeah, the ones I mentioned to you are, I mean, especially I would say just about any book John Fosse's ever written. I mean, I'm telling you, read some of his stuff. Just pick one that you think sounds interesting. There's one called Boathouse, which I think it didn't end the way I wanted it to, but it's beautiful. But yeah, I think his I don't go to a lot of plays, but I think playwrights are so talented. They just don't hold my attention. But I think his writing as a playwright really informs his writing as an author, and it really comes through in these books. And they're so much more beautiful than I think than some other books have been written, just because I think this guy's ability to write and his range of writing and his just all of the effort he puts into it is probably informed by being a playwright. I don't know what I'm talking about, but that's my guess. And so I just think whatever he does is like it's gold to me. And every time he puts out another book, I'm just like I gotta tear through this. So
let me read it.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then I know you don't watch a lot of movies, but do you have a favorite?
That changed so much since I've gotten older. My favorite movie used to be called Welcome to the Dollhouse. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
I loved it so much before I had children. And this is not one of those things where like, I'm a girl dad and I can't change the way I saw women. It's not that.
Yeah.
This is about a kid who's getting like picked on a lot. And I think just having a child, like
you didn't want to see that anymore.
Yeah. It's not that thing. It's, you get a lot of typical dads who are like, I had a daughter and I got married and now I can't be mean to women because I love a woman or something. That's not what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to be the thinking around that. It's just simply that this was like a, it was like a really hard movie to watch, but that used to be one of my favorite movies of all time. Trying to think, again, documentaries are what hit me pretty hard. I just watched a really great one called what was it? The Pez Outlaw.
Okay. What's that?
Which it's about a guy, and this is gonna sound terrible and boring, but a guy who imports Pez dispensers into the US illegally.
What? There's an illegal Pez
black market for Pez.
There's a whole black market for Pez dispensers.
This does not sound boring to me at all.
It is fascinating and it's beautiful, and you'll see a great love story in it, which you wouldn't expect from something like this. But it's really it's a great movie. I saw it a couple months ago and I can't stop talking about it. So I would say watch that and tell me what you think. I do want you to email me about any of these books that I talked about or this movie, because I think you'll really enjoy it. And then if you watch my wife's movie, you should tell me too.
Yes.
So,
we will.
That would be so awesome.
So,
for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, that I think, because I don't have a great memory for things, that's the one that's stuck with me lately. So that's one I'd say.
That works.
Perfect.
Very good. Okay, and then we would like you to talk about anything that you would want to, like
where to find you if you want our listeners to find you.
Yeah, if you want to find me, I'm on Instagram. It's just my name. It's just at Matt Logelin. You can follow me. I'm private, but I let pretty much everybody in as long as you don't. I have like a weird vetting process. It's like, do you have like 500 followers you posted twice? Like you're usually a bot. It's not always the case. So I'm kind of selective with it, but like, but yeah, anybody can follow me. It's like, it's very boring. I will warn you. It's, as you probably gleaned from most of this is not about the life of some, Hollywood writer. It's about a guy who takes his kids to the zoo and takes his kids to the, local playground and stuff like that. And we go to farmers markets and eating tamales and stuff. And so it's pretty boring as lives go, but you're welcome to follow along.
Awesome. Well, this has been so fun. Thank you so much.
Gosh, yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry I talk so much, but I'm really glad we
It's fantastic.
Thanks for letting us chat with you for 2 hours.
Of course.
I didn't expect it to be 2 hours.
No, but it was
anytime.
Oh my gosh, I loved it. So
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And
thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We really hope that you enjoyed this awesome interview with Matthew Logelin. Allie and I just feel so incredibly lucky to have even interviewed him. Like, thank you so much, Matthew, for coming onto our podcast. And thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed this nice little surprise during our break in between season 2 and season 3. But guess what? We've got like a week and a half until we're back. And we're back with my birthday month books. I'm so excited. The first one, I think, is The Great Gatsby, but let me double check. Yeah, I was right. It is The Great Gatsby. We are starting with The Great Gatsby. We hope you enjoy it. Bye, guys. Thanks for sticking with us. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, we would greatly appreciate it if you subscribed, rate, and reviewed. You can also follow us on Facebook at Offscript, Instagram at Offscript Podcast 21, and TikTok at Offscript_pod.
shoutouts to Madam Ashen Creations for our adorable logo art.
And Adam Daniel for our incredible theme song.
And to Creative Cinephile Productions for producing our podcast. See you next time.